Democrats aren't the only ones keeping a close eye on the New Hampshire primary today.
Yeah, so is President Trump's sole remaining Republican challenger, Bill Weld. He's a former two-term governor of Massachusetts. Weld has been on the campaign trail since he launched his bid in April of 2019, but his Oval Office efforts have so far proven to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, some states are actually canceling their GOP primaries in an effort to help the president. And according to a recent Gallup poll, 94% of Republicans approve of the job President Trump has done so far.
Bill Weld is joining us now from Manchester, New Hampshire. Thank you so much for joining us, Bill. At least you're sort of next door neighbors.
Thank you, Emery. Thank you, Vlad.
Good. You're next door neighbors to New Hampshire, so you're sort of in your own backyard. But it's no surprise to you that this endeavor is a long shot. So I want to ask you, why do you think you have a chance of beating President Trump, perhaps, or is that why you got into this race?
Sure, absolutely. The plan is to exceed expectations in New Hampshire at a minimum, get a little bit of a following wind into Super Tuesday, which is Massachusetts, Vermont, California, Colorado, states that are pretty Bill Weld friendly, relatively speaking, and take it from there.
So, as you know, Governor, the president's base is probably one of his greatest assets. How do you appeal to that specific group of voters? And are you, in fact, going after them, or are you looking at those independents, those folks who may have voted for President Trump, but perhaps don't like what they see as a problematic presidency?
Well, everyone's welcome, of course, but really the strategy is to try to enlarge the electorate that votes in the Republican primary. So a lot of the appeal is to independents or undeclared voters, as they're called in New Hampshire, who can vote in either primary. Millennials, Gen Xers, women, all women, not just suburban moderate women, I think could well consider a vote for me in the primary. I'm an economic conservative. I was on with a Trump-leaning talk show host yesterday, and I said, I really believe that President Trump is the rhino, the Republican in name only in this race, because he's not an economic conservative. I thought the poor man was going to have apoplexy.
So former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh has dropped out of the presidential race. Here's what he had to say just a few days ago about ending his campaign. Then we can talk about it afterwards.
Nobody can beat him. It's Trump's party, John. It's not a party. It's a cult. He can't be beat in the Republican primary, so there's no reason for me or any candidate really to be in there. The party has become a cult.
So I want to get your take on this. Is the Republican Party the same party it was when you were serving as congressman?
Well, it certainly is not the same party as it was when I was serving as governor. I mean, the fact that everybody except Mitt Romney among the Republicans in the Senate decided to, quote, acquit, close quote, the president based on hearing no evidence whatsoever, that was a dark day in the history of the Republican Party, I think. And look, President Trump is either going to win or he's going to lose. If he loses, then I think everybody can get on with their work and we won't have to worry and be obsessed and exhausted all the time, which people all over the country are. If he wins, I think the Republican Party will probably split, and the sort of nice people, if you will join remnants of other parties and form a new party, and the president can go on with his immigrant bashing and conspiracy theories and the like.
Thanks for correcting me on that. I was looking down on my notes and seeing one thing and saying something what I shouldn't be saying. So yes, former governor. But he said something specific. He said it's turned into a cult. Is that too strong?
Yeah, I think that's too strong. I mean, you can understand how the president was elected. He appealed to a lot of people who felt left behind, and he had this brilliant slogan, drain the swamp. I wish I'd run on that, Wish it was original. I have 3 stints in Washington, and I know exactly what he meant by that. But, now we know a lot of other things about the president, and I think the bottom line is the work that needs to be done, attacking the trillion-dollar deficits, making provision for the fact that we're going to lose 20% of our jobs in the next 10 years to artificial intelligence, guarding against the polar ice cap melting. That goes under the name of climate change. And that's an issue. The deficit and climate change are issues that appeal to undecided voters. They appeal to young voters. And I find they have a lot of resonance, both of them.
So, Governor, let me ask you this. No one would question your bona fides as a Republican, and you even just sort of talked about them as we began our discussion here. I'm curious if, given your long standing in the Republican Party, if you're talking to some of your fellow Republicans, those that are in Congress, other governors, and getting their take on what they see when it comes to President Trump. Are you hearing, as we often hear from our own reporting, that many Republicans don't like what the president says, don't like what the president does on Twitter, and they even find some of his policies problematic? If you just have to go back and look at the sound bites of all the people who were running for the Republican nomination back in 2015, what they said of President Trump back then, it's hard to believe that they all of a sudden would feel differently, if not for the fact that they really, really, really love their jobs as senators and congressmen and women and governors. And I wonder if you've had those kinds of private discussions with fellow Republicans that say, yeah, you know, behind closed doors, can't take it. But in front of the cameras and knowing what he can do, what he's doing right now to Senator Mitt Romney, I don't need that. I want to continue on in my role in Washington, maybe because they say I feel I can do a lot more for the people that send me there.
Yes, I have had a bunch of those conversations, and it's exactly as you put it, Vlad. That's a very good summary. It's fear. It reduces to one word, fear. And the president has convinced everybody that he's a totally unscrupulous, vindictive person. And so they're fearful that the president will run someone against them in the primary. And that is much more of a factor, obviously, in the Senate than it is for a governor. It's also a factor for members of Congress. And it's really pathetic. It's one of the reasons why I think the party is being hollowed out by the president's vindictiveness, and also the fact that he's trashing our democratic institutions, trying to persuade people that a free press is the enemy of the people, that an independent judiciary is bad for democracy. I mean, these are the words of a would-be dictator. There's no other way around it. But and that's one of the reasons why I think the party may split in two if the president is reelected. If he's not, no problem.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you made about the party being split in two, because it does seem, as so many have written and opined, that the Republican Party is now the party of President Trump. Yeah. And there are folks like you, or perhaps Senator Romney and others, who still hold true to the ideals that were first espoused by Barry Goldwater and ultimately by President Reagan and President Bush and others. So I wonder, though, on the flip side of those conversations, right, are your Republican friends telling you, hey, Governor, you know, love what you're doing, but don't think you can win, so I'm counseling you to step down or step aside because it just is not going to work out in the way that you want it to work out?
No, I haven't heard that. And by the way, when I first ran for governor, I was at sub-asterisk levels, and everyone said, kid, don't do this. You're just going to ruin your law practice and humiliate your family, and you won't be able to hold a job in the future. I said, thanks very much. Went ahead, and that was as long shot a race as this, maybe even more so, and yet I won. And I won twice. And the first time I got 50% of the vote, and the second time I got 71% of the vote. So it worked out well in the end.
All right. Governor Bill Weld, former governor of Massachusetts, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Good luck tonight.
Thanks, folks.